Welcome to Been There, Learned That. This is the podcast for leaders devoted to Jesus, their families, and the pursuit of meaningful work. As a life and leadership coach with decades of experience in church, nonprofit, and corporate settings, I am passionate about supporting others. Join me right here every week to gain clarity, confidence, and sustainable strategies to help you break free from behavior patterns that are hindering your leadership. Imagine having authentic energy for your life. It is entirely possible, and it all starts right here. Let's get started. Hi friends, welcome back to Been There, Learned That. I'm your host, Dana Byers, and today's episode I think is going to be a powerful one. I had so much fun preparing this. I poured so much love into it, and I hope you feel that as we head into this topic of owning your worth and how to take ownership of your value. Well, let me start by asking you this. Have you ever found yourself questioning your worth or doubting the impact that you make? If so, you are not alone. In this episode, we're going to dive into what it means to own your worth, how to truly recognize your intrinsic value, how to confidently own, your own unique gifts and strengths that God gave you, and how to live it out boldly in your personal and professional spaces at all the tables you get to sit at. So why is this important? Well, I really wanted to talk about this today because I've noticed that when people own their own value, everything starts to shift in their lives. If you own your own value, your confidence grows, your relationships improve and deepen, your career can flourish, and you start living a more fulfilled life. So let's dig in. First, I want to start with the basics. What do I mean when I use the word value? Where your value isn't just about your skills and accomplishments, it's about who you are, your unique perspective, your personality, the way you bring energy and solutions to every space you enter. In fact, we hear the term a lot, the phrase add value. And lately that started bothering me a little bit. I don't think it's bad or wrong, but I think you are value. I think just by showing up and sitting at the tables that you're at, you are bringing value. You don't have to increase your value or make value happen. I think you just show up, reflect who you are, the gifts and strengths God's given you, the experiences you've had, and you get to serve from that place. You don't have to add value or create it. So to uncover this, let's identify your core strengths. Here's a couple of exercises you can try. One, think about what comes naturally to you. What do people often come to you for advice or help with? When they're like, gosh, that looked like it was so easy for you. How did you do that? And you're kind of shrugging it off like, what are you even talking about? I've been doing this since I was a kid, or I didn't give it a second thought. That was easy for me. That's one of your core strengths, whatever that is. And then two, you can ask trusted friends or colleagues what they appreciate most about you. Their answers might surprise you. They might be able to identify, if you can get over yourself and ask them, they might be able to identify for you some of those core strengths that you just haven't really picked up on yet. You might not know you're a great communicator. It's just what you do. So take a moment to reflect what makes you unique and what do you do effortlessly that others find challenging to do. And I also want to challenge you, find some trusted friends or colleagues at work and ask them what they appreciate most about you or what they notice in you. This is not a time for you to worry about how they perceive you. If you go in with the intent of understanding your core strengths so that you can kind of expand on them to serve others better, that's all you need to do. Just show up and ask the question. And remember, your worth is not tied to achievements or to external validation. You don't need a title, an award. You don't need a paycheck. You don't need someone else's approval to have value. You already are value. It's innate. It's part of who God created you to be. Now I want to talk a bit about breaking through limiting beliefs, because even if you know your core strengths, I guarantee you, like the rest of us who are human, you've got some limiting beliefs to address. So I want to talk about what often stands in the way of owning your value, and that's limiting beliefs. Have you ever thought things like, I'm not enough? Or maybe you've thought, I need to be perfect, or I have to get that just right, or I really don't have what it takes to do that job, or I would never be a good wife. I don't know. There are all kinds of thoughts that are so common, but they're also incredibly limiting. And if we don't capture our thoughts, we aren't aware that we allow these limiting beliefs to come into our brain, and we accept them sometimes multiple times a day for years on end. So here's a challenge for you, my friend. I want you to take a moment to think about where those beliefs come from. They might stem from a past failure, a comparison to someone else, maybe a critical voice of a person in your life that you've internalized. Where did those beliefs come from? Where did they initiate? And you don't have to dwell on the circumstance, but realize that something happened that caused you to form that conclusion. And you don't have to agree with that conclusion. It's a belief that's limiting you. Now, you might not believe the exact opposite. So for example, if you were thinking, I'm not enough, you don't have to believe the exact opposite, which is, I can do everything easily, right? I'm not asking you to believe something that's not completely true, but I am asking you to be more open to holding on to that limiting belief less, to diminishing the power that that belief has over you. And here's why. There's good news. Those beliefs are not the truth. You've just accepted them. That's it. You have the power to question and replace those beliefs with statements that are more true, statements that serve you, not statements that you're making up that are false and fake affirmations, but statements that are not limiting you in your ability to move forward and understand your value. So the next time a limiting belief comes up, I want you to ask yourself, is this really true? Is this really true? And then you can replace it with something that's more empowering and more true. Like, I may not do this perfectly, but I'm going to be able to do it. Or I have everything I need to take the next step, even if I'm not going to nail it. To be able to help yourself bridge the chasm, bridge that gap between where you are today and where you would like to be without allowing those limiting beliefs to impact your life as much as they do. And then I want you to think about embracing ownership in your daily life. Taking ownership of your value isn't just a mindset, it's a daily practice. And before you start getting stressed out and maybe zoning out or shutting me off, I'm not saying you have to develop a bunch of new habits and there's this whole process every day you need to take on. What I am asking you to do is to identify and express your needs and boundaries. Embracing ownership in your daily life means that there's the key to protecting your energy and to honoring your worth is to speak up for what you need. Maybe you need a little bit more time to focus at work with fewer interruptions. Maybe you need support or help from a team member on a particularly challenging project. Or maybe you just need to say no to something that doesn't align with your priorities. So being able to express your needs and boundaries as they come up is a daily practice that's going to help you take ownership of the value, agreeing with God in the value that you bring. Second, you can celebrate your wins and your growth no matter how small. Now, I don't know a lot of people who are great at this. I'm just going to tell you that straight up, including myself. We love to celebrate the big things, or we maybe accomplish what we consider a big thing, and then we look for the next immediate thing to work on, right? It's like there's a trophy in your hand, you set it down, you get up the next day, and you go try to tackle new territory. But hear me say, that is a recipe for burnout. Every step you take forward matters. Maybe you had a tough conversation that was difficult for you that you haven't been able to have before with a particular individual that you find to be a little bit crusty to talk to. That's maybe a small win or a big win, but it's something you can celebrate. Maybe you started a project or you showed up for yourself in a meaningful way. Maybe you shared your opinion in a meeting where you typically struggle to speak up. These are things to celebrate because you are growing. You're embracing ownership of the value of who you intrinsically are when you take time to celebrate and acknowledge the growth and the wins that you're experiencing, even if they're not seemingly big to everyone else. And then finally, I want to talk for just a moment about assertive communication. Now remember, if someone's assertive, it doesn't mean they're aggressive. I want to create a society and a culture where we value assertiveness. Because owning your value means being confident about what you bring to the table. It doesn't mean that you're prideful. It doesn't mean you're sassy. and you're steamrolling or, bowling down everyone in your way, this could just mean simply that you're advocating for yourself for a fair salary, or you're pitching an idea that might get rejected, but you want to share it. Or maybe you're simply standing firm in a decision you made and you're not willing to be moved because, let's say, for example, you're not willing to spend the extra money you have in your budget on a family outing that you're not really interested in doing. That's okay. You can stand firm and be assertive without being aggressive or rude. Embracing these types of approaches is going to remind you of the intrinsic value of who you are. And because you are valuable, your opinions and preferences matter. Your wins and growth matter. Now, does that mean they're more important than everything else? Absolutely not. But I believe that most of you listening to this are going to put others' value ahead of your own. So I really wanted to include that in this episode for you to take that to heart. So after embracing the ownership of your value in daily life by expressing your needs and boundaries, celebrating your wins and growth, and engaging in assertive communication where needed, I want you to think about living out your value in action. Okay, listen to me on this. Owning your value doesn't stop with recognizing it. You need to live it out. It's not enough to just know it. You need to live it out. Now, I'm not encouraging you to be prideful. I'm not encouraging you to say you're the center of the universe. That's not it at all. But I am inviting you into living out your value by taking actions that show you agree with God and being a person of value. Here's some ways you can do that. 1, be visible. You have to speak up. Sometimes you're going to have to step into a spotlight to share your ideas, to share your gifts, and to share your unique perspective. No one else has had your experience. If you're not sharing it with us, you're actually withholding it. And it might feel uncomfortable at first to be visible, but the more you do it, the easier it will become. Number 2, I want you to seek opportunities for growth. That's going to help you live out the understanding you have of your value by action. When you seek opportunities for growth, you're looking for spaces where your strengths can shine. Whether that's a leadership role when you're volunteering in a local organization, taking on a new project at work, you name it, whatever it is, look for opportunities to grow. People who understand their value are not threatened by the thought of stepping into a place where, yes, they have strengths that can shine, but also they don't completely know how to do everything they're going to be asked to do. They're willing to be taught, to grow. They're not threatened by not knowing everything. They show up open, willing, and able to grow and to be taught, to be teachable, because they understand their value. And then most importantly, living out your value by daily actions is one way to do that is by serving others with your gifts. So when you use the talents that God has given you, I mentioned earlier in this episode, the things that come easily to you, the things that your coworkers or loved ones are just like, wow, when I see him do that, he makes it look so easy. When you use those talents to serve others, you're not only affirming your own value, but you're also using that value to impact their lives. To me, that's the win-win, right? That's you leading from your strengths, which don't drain you as much as things that aren't your strengths. So you're leading from a place of strength. You understand the value that you bring, but you also get to use that to make an impact in other people's lives. This is a beautiful opportunity God gives us if we're open to living out the value that he's placed in us, living that out with daily action. So I know as I'm sharing this with you, you might be experiencing some setbacks, maybe a little bit of self-doubt. If you've been on this path before, you start trying to agree with God and the value that you bring to the human race, and you start doubting things maybe. So I want to address this hard truth. Your journey here will not always be smooth. You will face setbacks. You will have moments of self-doubt. Understanding your value and owning your worth, taking ownership of that, it doesn't mean that you won't face setbacks or moments of self-doubt, and that's okay. Because when resistance comes, you're going to be expecting it. You're going to remind yourself of this truth. And the truth is that your value does not diminish because of something not going the way you thought it would, or a tough season, or someone saying no, or someone seeing it differently, or being misunderstood. There's a long list of things here that do not diminish your value. But taking ownership of your worth means you're going to have to remind yourself of that. But you can also lean into accountability and support. If you surround yourself with people who agree with your value, who see the value in you, who are not threatened by the way God made you to be, they can help remind you of it when you forget. And guess what? You can do the same for them. So whether it's a mentor, a friend, maybe a small group or a faith-based community, you don't have to navigate this alone. Get yourself in environments with people who see your worth, you see their worth mutually, and you encourage each other when it's needed. And then finally, you can practice grace and resilience. Owning your worth is a lifelong journey, right? It's not like you're going to start it at a certain age and be done a couple years later. This is a lifelong journey. When we experience setbacks or circumstances change or outcomes are different than we expected, that's going to be part of the process, but we're also going to grow there. If we practice grace and resilience in those moments, we use that as an opportunity to grow, and we don't lose sight of the intrinsic value that God has placed in us as His creation. So let's do a quick recap of what we've learned today. 1, your value is intrinsic. It's about who you are, and not so much about what you do. It's about who you are. 2, challenge the limiting beliefs that are holding you back. You can replace those with other statements that are empowering truths instead of limiting beliefs that keep you from taking the action that you would like to take in faith. 3, we learned that we can embrace ownership of our value by expressing our needs, celebrating even the smallest wins, and communicating assertively where necessary. 4, you can live out your value by being visible, making yourself visible, seeking growth opportunities, and serving others. Finding places where you know, I can make a difference there. I'm going to step in there and let them know this is kind of my sweet spot. I would like to be able to serve here because I know it's going to help people, and I would love to use the gifts that God has given me. And then number 5, you can overcome the inevitable setbacks that you face with grace, with resilience, getting up and doing it again, and with support. So here's a call to action for you today, okay? Listen to me. Don't stop listening just yet. I want to give you this call to action. This week, I want you to take one step to own your worth. That might be setting a boundary, sticking to a decision, expressing your needs, or celebrating a small win. Whatever it is, take that step with confidence. And remember, you are already valuable just as you are. Owning that value is about letting the world see it too. I want to thank you for being here for today's episode. If you found this helpful, please subscribe to my podcast, share this episode with a friend, and leave a 5-star review. And until next time, I want to encourage you to keep leading with faith, with purpose, and with boldness. You've got this.